Hello and welcome to the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we are continuing to march forward through yet another offseason together. As always, Jaguars On SI is your best stop for the most comprehensive Jaguars coverage that you are going to find anywhere, whether it be locally or even nationally. We give you our 100% free, 24/7 boots on the ground coverage daily. And you can find us on social media such as Facebook and Twitter at Jaguars on SI. And you can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. Welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. Today, we are going to talk about how the Jacksonville Jaguars are seemingly going in a bold new direction just in terms of how they operate. Now, we've talked before on this podcast about the Jaguars going in the direction of really marching to their own drum, doing things their own way. They very clearly are going to do things a different way in Jacksonville than things are traditionally done in the NFL, than things have normally been done in Jacksonville. Jacksonville over the last couple of years was very, traditional, very conservative in the front office. Not even just last couple of years, goes back further than that. And the addition of James Gladstone and Liam Cohen and the influence, obviously, that they have had on themselves from the Los Angeles Rams, it's very clear that the Jaguars are going to move in a bold and different way this season. Now, the top way that has kind of manifested itself and the one that has grabbed the most headlines has been the Jaguars opting to not do any top 30 visits this offseason. Now, the Los Angeles Rams have sparingly used top 30 visits in the last couple seasons. Before this offseason, I believe they've had 4 visits with players so far this offseason. But I believe before this year, in the last 3 to 4 drafts, they had 5 total top 30 visits. It's something that the Rams have used to get further medical reports sometimes on players with injury questions. I know Payne Durham was one of them a couple years ago. But otherwise, the Rams, much like how they don't go to the combine, believe that they can get the information in a more streamlined and efficient way that kind of removes any biases that come at play. And that is what the Jaguars are doing. This doesn't mean the Jaguars aren't visiting with players. This doesn't mean the Jaguars aren't getting their homework on players. This is the Jaguars saying that they don't believe, more or less in James Gladstone's words, that they have the superpower to get to know a player inside and out within an hour, which is what the visit is, which is a hard point to argue against. And just naturally, what the Rams strategy has been if you send, one of your scouts, front office members to the players' environment, as opposed to bringing them into your own, you get to see them more in their own natural state, more how they really are. Because no matter how you dress it up, no matter how you address it, when you bring a player into your environment, there is a clear and implicit bias that is already made, with that player. They may act completely themselves. They may not. And it's because you're taking them out of their environment and putting them in your own. And to me, I don't see the difference in going to a player's environment and spending some time with them and doing a top 30 visit. Other than one of them, you don't have to report to the league, and one of them you do. Here was James Gladstone's entire quote on why the team doesn't do top 30 visits. He said, and I quote, "I think there's a lot of layers to not doing those facility visits that you all are accustomed to. Top 30 visits, as they're phrased. It goes back a while in my experience. Let's take it this direction. The implicit bias that can come to life this late in the process, the last player you might sit down with, and how that might differ from the first player you sit down with, knowing it's closer to the decision that's upcoming. In addition to that, so much of the work that's done in preparation for these decisions starts years in advance. The source intel from those who have lived with these individuals is likely to be more accurate than me sitting down with a prospect for a short period of time and attempting to dissect who that human being is. So I don't view myself as having this extreme superpower, deciphering the complexity of a person in an hour, right? I would probably say I can work that in tandem, but there are other mechanisms that we tend to lean into to help us determine whether or not a player is, in fact, a fit for us, more than just a singular touch point that would be a top 30 visit. We have a lot of additional mechanisms that we deploy that don't necessarily put us at risk for the rest of the world to know what direction we're heading. So often those become public facing touch points, at which point you're sacrificing some version of strategy come draft day as well. So a lot of different things go into it. Removing biases, the fact that you're talking to these players in their own environment, and then there's also some gamesmanship with it. Because like I said, one of these visits you have to report to the NFL and they get out. One of these visits you do not. On top of that, Gladstone also made it clear, we asked him a question on how do you get a clear picture, a complete picture on a player's draft profile if they don't do any athletic testing in the offseason. And the way Gladstone answered it to me was fascinating and kind of shows me why, maybe the Los Angeles Rams don't go to the combine. Because, frankly, it doesn't seem like the combine's athletic testing is something that the Jaguars and potentially the Rams put a lot into. Here's what Gladstone said. He said, I think many people are leaning in a different direction than just strictly those testing and measurement marks. Certainly, it's helpful when you can compare apples to apples from one player to the next. Data tracking for us and on-field speeds is going to weigh much differently than a 40-yard dash. So that's GPS tracking, obviously, miles per hour during the route, stuff like that. To me, this is all brand new. This is fresh for the Jaguars. And for the first time, it really seems like they are moving in a bold and different direction. Now, time remains, to be seen if it works out. But at the very least, the Jaguars are taking this thing in a very, very different direction than they have taken it in past years. Especially, we've said for probably a decade plus, but especially the last couple of years. The Jaguars had a very traditional way of going about things. And now, again, traditional doesn't mean bad, and bold and new doesn't mean good all the time. But we will see soon which side the Jaguars